And a good evening to you, everybody. It is Tuesday, October 14th, 2025. I'm Nate Eaton. Welcome to Courtroom Insider. I have big news tonight. We have a new chair that I'm sitting on here in our studio. Can you see it has a nice back? I can lean back. The chair we had in here before was great, but incredibly uncomfortable. So if we sat in it longer than 5 minutes, it was painful to the back and the backside. So now that you know all about our chairs, I'm glad that you're happy because I'm happy. We have a new chair today that Jordan put together, and so yeah, it's a good way to start the program. So glad you're here tonight. Please let me know where you're watching from. Let me know if you have any questions. Appreciate all the feedback you send us to questions@east.idahonews.com. The comments you leave, we do read them and we try to implement some of the suggestions you have. In fact, tonight, in just a moment, I'm going to be speaking with Chris Hansen, and we kick it off with a question from one of you, from some of you, actually. You sent in some questions, so we're going to get to that. Before we get to that interview with Chris Hansen, there's some updated news to talk about. Last night, we spoke about the Ellen Greenberg case, how the medical examiner in Philadelphia ruled that her death was a suicide. Remember, this is the teacher who back in 2011 was found with 20 stab wounds, including in her neck, while her boyfriend was downstairs working out. He came back, he found her body. Nancy Grace explained it briefly about how there were so many weird questions surrounding this, like how could you stab yourself 20 times, including some of the wounds that appeared to have been left in the body after her death. The medical examiner originally ruled it a homicide, went and met with the police leaders in Philadelphia, then switched it to suicide. Then, after much pressure, they reopened the investigation, and now another medical examiner has come out and said it was suicide. And again, talking about the knife wound in the back of Ellen's neck, while the medical examiner, Lindsay Simon, found the pattern of wounds was, quote, admittedly unusual, she added the fact that the fact remains that Ellen would be capable of inflicting these injuries herself. Simon described many of Ellen's injuries as consistent with, quote, hesitation wounds, which are tentative self-inflicted injuries that can precede a fatal wound. This has been Many of you have thoughts about this case. And since we met last night, her attorney has come out. The family of Ellen Greenberg, her parents, their attorney has come out saying, well, before I get to that statement, let me just say that the ME said that they reviewed autopsy, police documents, photographs, testimony from experts, plus the Hulu docuseries, the experts that were in the Hulu docuseries that was done about this case. And they said that's how they reached their conclusion, the medical examiner, that this was suicide. Now, an attorney for Greenberg's parents, who filed 2 lawsuits against the city of Philadelphia, scoffed, of course, at the medical examiner's new report, calling it a deeply flawed attempt to justify a predetermined conclusion. Quoting now the spokesman, by ignoring key evidence that contradicts suicide, the extensive 3D photographs proving Ellen could not self-inflict all of the wounds, unexplained bruises, missing surveillance footage, an intact lock, accounts of a toxic relationship, etc., Simon builds a flimsy case on distorted portrayals of Ellen's mental health, propped up by cynical distortions of Ellen's managed anxiety, a condition widely experienced daily by over 40 million Americans, William Trask said. The ME in her report said that Ellen had anxiety, which would have been one of the reasons she ended her life by suicide. And this is the spokesperson saying, hold up, 40 million Americans have anxiety. You're not going to say that they're going to go and end their lives with suicide. The spokesman goes on to say, this report is an embarrassment to the city and an insult to Ellen and her family. Ellen's family just wanted the truth. It is clear the truth will not come from Philadelphia's law enforcement machinery. Though Ellen's city turned its back on her, we will continue through other avenues to get justice for her murder by any means necessary. The medical examiner's office agreed to look at this case back in February after, as part of a settlement. It was part of a lawsuit that her family filed against the city. And They got an undisclosed amount of money, and the city did not admit that they were wrong, but they did admit to reopen the case. And then there's also been a separate lawsuit filed against Dr. Marlon Osborne, the pathologist who conducted the 2011 autopsy and initially called it a homicide before changing it to suicide. That one was also settled. And at the time, Osborne said, "It is my professional opinion Ellen's manner of death should be designated as something other than suicide." This is a case that will be talked about for a long, long time. And you hope for their family, for her family. And Nancy Grace wrote a book about this, what happened to Ellen. And if you go on and watch the interview I did with her a few months ago, there's just so many red flags. There's so many red flags. And I'm not an expert. I just interview experts, and um, that's what we know now. So a little bit of new information tonight about the medical examiner, the Ellen Greenberg investigation, and what happens from there. And we've posted stories. You can go read them on east.idahonews.com if you want to get caught up on that. All right, now to my guest tonight, Chris Hansen. I don't think he needs an introduction. Chris Hansen, I remember when I was a kid in the, no, I wasn't a kid. I think I was, anyway, it was in the mid 2000s. So I would have been a young adult. And this show called To Catch a Predator came on TV. And it was this journalist they would have these men who were looking for teenagers to have sex, and they'd show up at the house, and they'd be confronted. And it was a massive show. It was on Dateline. It was part of Dateline, and then they spun it off to create its own series called To Catch a Predator. And at one point it was on like every night of the week, and everybody was watching it. That Dateline show, To Catch a Predator, ended, and Chris left NBC, but he's gone on to continue this tracking down predators. And in fact, he has sting operations. He's been busy the past like 2 months going to different states and still putting these out on True Blue TV. He also has a YouTube channel. You can watch him there. And he's done a lot of great work trying to expose this behavior and how common it is. And, a few weeks ago, if you missed it, we did our investigation that East Idaho News did with the Attorney General's office, where we went undercover with the AG investigators, the ICAC unit, the Internet Crime Against Children's unit. And we went out, and it was like every morning you could go and arrest a different one. There was two in the same apartment complex. Their buildings were back to back. They had no idea that they were both there. And we went with them as the police arrested them and charged them with this type of behavior. That type of stuff was soliciting photos and exchanging photos and videos of kids online. What Chris does is actually go out with a crew and police, works with the police, and arrests all men who are going after these young girls, young boys, in hopes of having a sexual interaction with them. So the other thing Chris is now doing is the Roblox social media angle, where there are predators that are entering these games, and my kids are on Roblox. It's the biggest platform for gaming in the world, and it's not just, it's like a universe within a universe where you can go on and create your games and other people can play them, and there's Robux, which is money that's exchanged in the platform. Anyway, he did a panel at CrimeCon just a few weeks ago in Denver with Schlepp. I interviewed Schlepp. If you missed that, go back and check it out. Who was part of Roblox and went after the predators who were in these games. And now Chris Hansen is working on a docuseries that's going to be coming out soon about that very issue. And so I wanted to catch up with Chris. Chris has become a friend over the years. We were on the crime cruise together last year. We've been at CrimeCon together. We've spoken several times, and Emmy did an interview with him, and it was a lot of fun. So anyway, here is Chris Hansen. Well, Chris, it's great to see you again. Been a couple of weeks since CrimeCon. How you been?
I've been great, Nate. Thanks for having me on. I'm used to being interviewed by your lovely and talented daughter, so this is the first time
This is gonna be a downgrade from that interview, but
you should be so proud of her, by the way. I get such a kick out of her. She's great.
She's loving it. I wanted to start off today by reading this question from a guy named Alex, who
Sure.
asked that I asked you this. He says, "I've always wanted to know, instead of entering the minds of predators, I'd rather enter into Chris's mind. Does he feel after, how do you feel after confronting predators for decades? Do you feel defeated by seeing this continue to exist? Do you lose hope in humanity during this time? Curious how you feel about all these years of terrible men doing terrible things.
Well, it's a great question, and it's usually prefaced by the other question, which is, do you ever go to therapy for talking to all these guys? And I guess the answer is no. I'd never lose hope in humanity, and I am shocked that 21 years into these investigations, the guys still show up. I think it's because there's so many different platforms and more, it seems, every month where adults can approach children and try to exploit them. So I think the work is important. I think it highlights a dark side of our society and it confronts people who need to be confronted and exposed. I hope that acts as a deterrent, but more important, I think it should act as a way to continue a dialogue um, that is very important and to have a conversation between parents and children about online safety, whether it's about sextortion or chat rooms or Roblox or any other game where adults have access to kids. And I think there's a sense of shame, and this grooming is very successfully conducted by some of these predators. And I think parents need to grab their kids and say, look, if something happens to you that makes you uncomfortable, come to me and together we'll solve the problem. I'm not going to get mad at you. I'm not going to harm the messenger or yell at you. Just let me know what's going on and we'll get this done. Because time and time again, Nate, I talk to parents whose kids were afraid to tell them there was an issue, there was a problem. And that's when disaster strikes.
Right. So I want to go back to when did you first start doing these type of operations, Chris? Was it the 90s or early 2000s? Because I
It
would
was
imagine were smartphones even around at that time?
Yeah, not so much. I mean, it was just at the dawn of the smartphone. So it was 2004
Okay.
was when we did the very first investigation. And I had heard of a group called Perverted Justice, an online watchdog group, which did this on its own. They had adults posing as children, and they'd go into chat rooms. In those days, it was basically just AOL, Yahoo, and maybe MySpace, if you remember what that is even. And they would just pose and sit there in these chat rooms. And if they were approached by an adult and a conversation ensued where the adult raised the specter of, illegal, inappropriate sex, they would post that adult's identity on their website. And sometimes law enforcement would get involved. When we heard about this, I pitched a story then at Dateline that would use their ability as decoys and our ability to wire a house with hidden microphones and cameras, which we had done on a number of different topics over the years. Traveled overseas to expose all kinds of nefarious activity. They signed off on it, and we did the story in Bethpage, Long Island. And in 2.5 days, 17 men surfaced in that investigation, including a New York City firefighter. And I thought, holy hell, if we could do this for the first time and catch this many guys in 17 days, what else must be out there? So we aired it the following fall, and it touched a nerve with people in a way few other stories I've ever done, impacted people. And we decided to do it again. And, one more time, a couple dozen guys showed up, including an Air Force intelligence officer, a guy who showed up naked, a rabbi, just a doctor, a teacher. I mean, on and on and on. And in those cases, law enforcement got involved after the fact and made some prosecutions. But it became clear to me at that point that in order to be socially responsible about this, we needed to partner with law enforcement because these guys needed to be prosecuted. And as the years have gone by, I think we're in our 21st year now, which I would have never have predicted back in 2004. We always work with law enforcement. And as I mentioned, as the years have gone by, we've, adapted and changed and made this so it was still very compelling in terms of a television investigation, but also, ensuring that justice was served and these guys face prosecution.
And here you are, still doing it. Still, technology may have changed, the platforms may have changed, but it's still the premise, the bottom line of men trying to meet up with young men, boys and girls for sex.
Exactly. We were in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan last Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday from this recording. And the Dickinson County Sheriff, Marquette County Sheriff, local law enforcement. We had a house, we had a sting. My crew was there, I was there, and in 3 days, 7 guys showed up. The week before, we were in Maryland. The week before, we were, in Louisiana. The week before that, we were in Florida. In the last month alone, I think we've caught, 35, 40 guys.
Hmm.
And it doesn't end. And we're now expanding in the jurisdictions where we work with law enforcement. Maryland, it was the first time there. In Harford County, the same county where that mother of five was assaulted and killed brutally by an illegal immigrant. And the sheriff there wanted to send out a signal that he wasn't going to have that sort of behavior in his community. And more law enforcement agencies, Nate, are making the decision to be proactive. Law enforcement is tired of reacting to heinous crimes against children. You know, Fine, they will bring the perpetrator to justice. But what if we go out there and we're proactive, like law enforcement is along with us in these stings, and they go after these guys before they can strike a real child? Then you're making even more of a difference, I would argue, because for every guy you take off the street or who you prosecute or who make sure never does this again, you save another three, four, five children potentially, according to law enforcement. And so I think it's important work. Look, obviously it's compelling television. These stories, and we call the series Takedown with Chris Hansen now, and they air first on our streaming crime network, True Blue, which people can find at watchtrueblue.com. But we have fast channels, and we do some work on Fox News and Fox Nation. So you see it in a lot of different places. YouTube, we have our own channel there. But it's also important because I think it's educational. I think it gets parents' attention, and I think it gets children's attention as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. I want to ask, does anything surprise you or shock you anymore when it comes to these situations?
In the last month alone, we've seen a medical doctor, we've seen a mental health therapist, we've seen a guy get on the floor and crawl up in a ball who had a great job, you know. Um, I saw 2 guys get into a pool in a sting house, a hot tub, one of whom had said 3 times in the conversation, Chris Hansen works with the local sheriff, Jason Ard here in Livingston Parish, sent articles to the girl, to the
About
detective
you?
about me.
Oh, wow.
And I go out to the pool in the back of the house, the back of the sting house to confront him. He goes, I knew it. 50-some-year-old man who's
Wow.
who's there to meet an underage child who he knows is home alone. He's in Louisiana on business, working from Texas, brings his buddy along, who may or may not have known exactly what was going on, but they're both in trouble now. And they're splashing around in the pool. It's unbelievable. We
Hmm.
had a guy last week, the previous sting before we were in northern Michigan, who worked for the Department of Defense and had a top secret clearance. His wife was in another state in Pennsylvania picking up one of their children. He's out trying to meet a 14, 15-year-old boy for sex. And he
No.
says he's got impulse control. I said, you sure do.
Yeah.
And he had a touch with law enforcement previously because he had sent pornographic material into a group chat that included a teenage boy. And he wasn't criminally prosecuted there. But you'd think a guy would say, wait, I've got a problem. I should address this before I really get into trouble. But no, he doesn't. And he ends up really in trouble.
Right. So does it get frustrating when you have some of these jurisdictions that don't take it seriously? The police do their job. They arrest these people. They spend countless hours. They go through this horrible material in these chat messages. And then it's forwarded to the prosecutor. And a lot of times the charges might get dropped or pled down, and then the person's out doing it again. How do you deal with that type of situation?
It doesn't happen as often as you'd think. In the vast majority of cases, there are prosecutions. I mean, these cases are solid,
Yeah.
mostly because the case is made in the chat. So yes, it's compelling television when the guy shows up. It shows intent that he traveled. But in most states, Nate, the case is in the chat log. It's the solicitation of a minor. It's using a computer to commit a felony or to solicit a child. The case is pretty much wrapped up. Now, if the guy doesn't show up, they have to go arrest him. And that's what happened just last week. We had 6 guys who showed up at the house, one who committed a crime but didn't show up. They went out and got him. They do this in Polk County, Florida. They do it in Genesee County, Michigan. They do it all over the country, Louisiana, as I mentioned. And so they do get prosecuted. Now, people in some jurisdictions who see these investigations are a little frustrated because in many cases, if there's no child porn or if it's the person's first offense, they will get probation. And I understand that frustration. But I will tell you this, at least they have to register as a sex offender. At least they are on probation. So if they offend, then they will go to prison.
Right. Yeah.
And in some of these cases where, the punishments have seemed, to me at least, and to the general public, our viewers, the citizens of these various communities, a little light. When they do find child porn, they go to prison. We just did a podcast episode. I do a podcast called Predators I've Caught, where I go back over previous cases. And the episode that dropped just yesterday talks about a guy who got 3 to 15 years in prison, who was busted a while back in Marquette County, Michigan. And it was because they found one image of child pornography on his phone, and that was enough to send him away for a long time. Now, a lot of these other guys, as I mentioned, get probation. In some states, the penalties are much more severe. In Florida, we saw a guy, and again, this is an extreme case, but we saw a guy who was offered a 10-year plea deal, right? Plead guilty, do your 10 years, be done. He went to trial, and because of child porn and other things he had on his computer, was convicted and was sentenced to life in prison, natural life in prison. So here's the guy who could have taken a 10-year deal, and he's gone.
Wow.
I mean, he is gone.
Yeah. Huh. Well, what do you think causes certain people to do this, to go inside and, successful people, doctors, firemen, judges, whatever, go inside these chats, even though they seem like to have a perfect life on the outside, they've got money, they've got a family, they're married. Why do it?
I ask that question to every single man who walks into this Sting house. And to be honest with you, Nate, I have never received an answer that satisfies my curiosity because I just don't get it. I don't understand why somebody would be attracted to a child. I don't understand why they think it would be okay to exploit a child. I don't understand how they carve out one part of their life where they're a parent to a 14-year-old, yet they're out to meet a 14-year-old. I just don't understand it. And I guess there's a part of me that hopes I never will. From a technical aspect, from a forensic aspect, I understand what experts say about it, that there are some people who are just hardwired towards pedophilia or an attraction towards younger people, boys and girls, and it stems from an experience in their childhood themselves, being abused perhaps, whether they're wired that way. I think the internet has sexualized teens in a way that is probably very unhealthy. And I think you see these sites where 13, 14-year-old girls are made to look glamorous and sexy. And I think over time, guys view this stuff. And if they're in any way leaning towards it, they get obsessed with the idea of it. They get obsessed with the fantasy of it. And then at some point, they no longer can look at the pictures or look at the porn, and they want to fulfill this fantasy. And that's when we see them knocking at our door. And this ranges from people who are violent and would do evil things to a child. We had a guy, and people always ask all the time, Nate, do I ever feel sorry for these guys? Well, we had a case in Louisiana a few weeks back. And the guy was 20 or 21, and he comes in, he's a clean-cut kid, glasses on, he's got his backpack. And he sort of Huck Finned me for a minute and made me think that, all right, maybe this is a one-time mistake.
Mm-hmm.
The chat was pretty graphic, and it was clearly illegal. He wanted to make a porn video with this girl, and it's illegal, clear-cut case. But, is this a case where a kid made a mistake? Maybe. And I interview him, they take him away. And in the backpack, is a loaded 9 millimeter pistol.
Oh, wow.
Loaded, full clip. So what happens, Nate, if we're not there and there is a girl there and she gets cold feet and doesn't want to make the porn video with him on his phone? What happens? Does he pull out that gun? Does he force her to do it? Does she resist? Are there shots fired? Does he try to destroy the evidence? Then what do you have?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so you're preventing any of those possibilities by arresting this guy in a sting operation.
Right. Yeah. Wow. A few weeks ago, Chris, at CrimeCon, you did a panel that was very eye-opening, at least to me, and I know many other parents, because I have kids who play Roblox. And I've thought, oh, this is just a simple, fun online video game or multiple video games. You can go on and create your own little world. And I think that's how it all works.
Well, that is, it's a video game within a video game, and it's
Right.
wildly popular and it's marketed to your kids.
So what's the big deal? What's the problem with it?
The problem with it is that predators have figured out that it's marketed towards kids, and there are games where kids have access as young as 5 years old with titles like Smash or Pass. Adults can approach kids on Roblox, posing as kids in sexualized environments, bathroom environments where you can look and peek and do all kinds of things. There are surprise boxes, and there is a currency called Robux. And we have identified cases where predators have used these Robux to try to convince kids to make videos of themselves in sexual environments, sexual predicaments, encourage siblings to do sexualized things, and get them to send these videos. And that's just one of many examples. I mean, we've interviewed people in one county alone in Florida, Marion County, Florida. There was a case where a 17, 18-year-old guy was doing exactly what I talked about with children, having them send videos. They bust him. And there's another victim down there who had a predator do this to her. She was 10 years old. And it turns out that predator is all the way over in the UK, in England. So we've got these ubiquitous crimes being committed. And it doesn't matter whether you live down the street from the target or whether you live across the world from the target. And so they want to have this environment where people are free to create and do things. And some wonderful things take place on Roblox, unquestionably. And it's a dynamic, very successful, publicly traded company. But their attitude, at least in my estimation, has been that we know best, we created this environment, and we can police it. Yet they won't allow law enforcement to conduct investigations on the platform, and I know this to be true. And they have thus far, after weeks and weeks of discussions and Zoom calls and emails, they have refused to sit down with me for an on-camera interview. They want to give me a handout interview. They want to give me background information to help me to be accurate in my reporting. But they don't want to answer my questions. They want to answer their own questions. Or they want to go on a morning show where there's limited time and they can control it. Or do a tech interview at a tech fair, where they're on friendly territory. And so now I'm in a position where, because I believe so fervently that they should be held accountable, that I've got to consider a spontaneous, unscheduled interview, which are sometimes unwieldy and not as flattering as a sit-down interview. So that's where we're at on that. But we're in the home stretch of this documentary, and I don't think this is a one documentary type thing.
Right.
I think this goes on in episode after episode, because I think this is the new predator investigation. There's so much of this activity on Roblox. And I hear this. I mean, every time I post an update on social media, the response is unlike anything else. In fact, that panel discussion you talked about at CrimeCon, where we had Michael Schlepp, who was a child prodigy on Roblox and was invited to all these fairs as a young kid, all these events, who was ultimately groomed by a content creator on Roblox and became suicidal over this abuse. Now he has come back around at the age of 22 and become an advocate and caught some predators on Roblox. What did Roblox do? It banned him. It sent him a cease and desist order. All kinds of very aggressive things were unnecessary. Now, when we outed Roblox and all this, suddenly we want Schlepp to be a part of the solution.
Oh,
But
they
the
did.
Roblox, yeah, they did. They've said that, and they wrote him a letter and said that. But we'll see. But the point is, I'm in this discussion with a spokesperson at Roblox, and this guy knows the deal. He's a former network news producer, right? And I said, "What?" I said, "You know what this is about? You guys have to sit down and answer the questions. This is television." And he said, "Well, we don't want to do that because you interviewed Schlepp and you interviewed the Louisiana Attorney General, and it looks like it might be a hit piece." I said, "Not a hit piece if you sit down and talk to me about it."
Right.
And I just moments ago recorded a video before I sat down with you and put it out on social media, updating everybody on that and talking about the fact that they're refusing thus far an on-camera interview. And so I anticipate that by the time you and I finish, there'll be a lot of reaction to that.
Well, they should. They need to. They need to interview
Well, I
and
think also, people, as we prepare this documentary, we took that CrimeCon presentation, Nate, and we turned it into a podcast episode. One of my podcasts is called Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. It's more of an interview program than the Predators I've Caught, where we look at past cases. And so that is up now wherever you get your podcasts, and it's also on my YouTube channel, Have a Seat with Chris Hansen, so people can watch an
oh yeah,
edited version of that presentation, that panel we did, which was very compelling. I mean, that
right.
detective is so sharp and so dedicated to this cause, and Schlepp is just an honest young guy trying to make a difference in the world. I
Yeah.
mean, he really is.
Chris, do you know when the documentary will be out,
The
complete?
documentary's not finished yet, so I've got about two or three more interviews, and you know what that's like. I'm guessing sometime between late November at the earliest and early January at the latest is the target date we're talking
Okay.
about. I mean, it's in editing, we're working on it. I got to figure out what I'm going to do with Roblox itself. I've got two or three more interviews I'm going to do in early November, but I'm guessing December, January timeframe.
All right. That'll be great to watch. What else are you working on?
Well, we continue to do our predator investigations and for Takedown with Chris Hansen, doing some stuff on Fox News and Fox Nation and a bunch of other crime-related documentaries that will be announced very soon.
Another question from a viewer: do you ever have women that show up hoping to meet
It's a
a
great
great?
question. We have had talk of that, but we've never had anybody actually show up. So we've had guys say, I'm bringing my wife or my girlfriend along for, a threesome or whatever else. And it never materializes. And I think when it comes to female predators, the experts tell us you're more likely to see the teacher student scenario. The female predator doesn't like the anonymity that the male predator so enjoys in these scenarios. And so, no, we have never seen one. There have been a couple cases over the years, but most of them have been the teacher. And I've never seen, more cases of that in the last couple of years than ever before. Female
Yeah.
teachers preying upon male students. I mean, it's shocking. Every week, it seems, there's another case.
Right. So, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we were on the crime cruise about a year ago, was that your first cruise?
It was my very first crime cruise and my very first cruise.
Cruise. And what'd
Yeah.
you think?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the people. I enjoyed, having dinner with you guys and you and your wife and the rest of the presenters. And we enjoyed it. My wife had been on a cruise before many years ago, but it was my first cruise. And look, I think, I think we dodged some weather, didn't we? Or
Yeah. Well, we got rerouted to another
got
island, which was
rerouted
great.
because of
Yeah.
some weather, but it was great. Nice folks and enjoyed everybody and had a good time. So I think we're in for the next one, which is
Yeah, I was gonna
a
say
year
you
from
must have
now.
liked it enough because we'll be there and you'll be there.
Yes.
So, what would you say to people that there's still cabins available? People can still
Well,
come.
look, I think it's the best of both worlds. CrimeCon has become this insanely popular event, right? And the Red Seat folks have done an extraordinary job putting this together and making it a high quality event. And for people who create content or people who consume content, either way, it's a great opportunity to learn and see experience all of this, amazing work that's being done in this sphere. And look, the cruise is a smaller venue. It's fewer people, a lot of free time, a lot of fun, some great ports, and you get some sun along the way. So, but it does create, I tell the story about a couple that my wife and I met, Gabrielle and I met, and they've been fans of the crime shows, and they drove all the way up from Alabama or down from Alabama to Florida to be on this cruise, and both of them had some physical challenges. They had to, use scooters, and I just happened to be in a position where I could take some time to talk to them. But anytime you think you have a bad day, these people loaded up their van, drove all the way there, went through the extra effort of having, physical challenges and using scooters and everything else, and could not have been happier just to be a part of the process. And when somebody goes to that effort to go see you speak about your craft, then you should just be thanking the Lord that you have the ability to create content for those people. And when folks like that show up, I'm in.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's a great synopsis. Chris, thank you. Anything that you want to add?
People can check out all the work at True Blue. That's TRUBLU. Watch trueblue.com for details. The podcasts are Predators I've Caught and Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. So those are wherever you get your podcasts, and the YouTube channel where they also appear in the video version is Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. TikTok is Have a Seat with Chris Hansen, and all the other social media platforms are at Chris Hansen on X and official Chris Hansen on Instagram. So if you follow all those, you'll know exactly what I'm doing almost in real time.
Every minute of the day. Last question. Have a seat. Was that just something that came out one day and it stuck?
It's just something that came out one day when I was trying to gain control of the situation, just keep some, safety in the whole first couple of episodes that we shot, the first couple of investigations, because we didn't have law enforcement in the first two. I had a security fellow with me, Ronnie Knight. But, I just get him in the chair because all the cameras were focused on the chair. In fact, one time we had an investigation where a little person showed up, a fellow who showed up for a child. Didn't make him any less dangerous, but it did make him outside the camera shot. And I said, you need to hop up there on that stool. He goes, no, I'm good here. I said, no, I need you to hop up on the stool. And I had to because he was so short that he wasn't in the camera frame.
The shot, right.
Because, now we have different technology where we zoom pan and we can do all kinds of stuff. But I said, no, you need to hop up there and get in the chair. So it just became a thing. And now it's on T-shirts and ball caps and everything else.
Memes on social media. It's your
everywhere.
Facebook meme, have a seat. Yeah.
Everywhere.
Well, thanks for having a seat with me today.
Well, my pleasure, Nate. It's great to see you, and I'm sure I'll see you soon.
All right, let's catch up soon. And when the documentary's out, please come back because I'd love to.
I promise you I will. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so if you can make it, it would be lovely to have you on the Crime Cruise. Crime Con next year is in Vegas. So it's in Las Vegas in May. You can use the promo code EATON, EATON, and go to CrimeCon and you'll get 10% off a standard badge with that code. And CrimeCon, there's 7,000 people. It's just massive, and classes and stuff happening all the time, multiple things happening, like 5 things at a time happening all day for 2 days, 2.5 days. And that's great. It's so much fun, and everybody's there, and it's a blast. And in Vegas, the nice thing is Vegas, you can walk everywhere. It's at Caesar's Palace, so you don't necessarily need to stay there in that venue. You can stay at any hotel on the Strip or off the Strip, and there's Ubers that come and go. It's an easy place to get around for hopefully a little bit cheaper if you book your hotels even off-site or whatnot. So that's coming up in May. But the cruise, Chris and I have been invited back on the cruise. We will be presenting on the cruise about different topics. And that's next November. So you have a whole year. You can go on, reserve your spot, use the promo code EATON. Again, you get 10% off, and it's a blast. It's not 7,000 people. It's like 300 or 200. It's much, much smaller. And when I spoke to the CrimeCon people a few weeks ago, they had sold quite a few. And so once they're gone, they're gone. And I got to tell you, probably the funnest thing we did there on the cruise last year was Family Feud. I had my team. I went against Cheryl McCollum. My team won. Then I went against Matt Murphy. My team won, and then we won the grand prize. We won Family Feud, and you better believe it, there will be a rematch, and I want you on my team. So, and Erica wants you on our team. So that's going to be next November on the Celebrity Cruise Line, and we go out of Florida, and we stop at, I think, Mazatlan. I think. I don't know the specifics. But anyway, go on crimecon.com if you use that promo code. And yeah, it'll be a good time. And it's not as many people. If you hate crowds, the cruise might be the thing for you. And it's so cool because you get to like go do a little bit of the crime con stuff and then go explore off the island and then go exercise on the boat if you want or hit up the buffet and then go back to the crime stuff. And we have dinner together every night and it's just a blast. Anyway, there's what we've got. So hope to see you there. You know who else I saw at CrimeCon this year was newspapers.com. So many of you went up and thanked them for sponsoring us. And I can't thank you enough for doing that because that allows us to continue to do these Courtroom Insider programs. The amount of time I spend doing this, I love it. I love doing these programs, and we have many more things planned, and we have to thank newspapers.com for supporting us. I talked last night about the guy who escaped prison here in Idaho and was found. He killed 2 fish and game wardens and then was found and ended up being acquitted and was released. So many of you are familiar with that story. I can't believe I wasn't. But yeah, anyway, that was great to discover, and I discovered it all on newspapers.com. You can go check them out. You get a free 7-day trial. You can go explore all you want. And then, if you're ever bored or ever looking into your family history or looking into your neighbor's family history, you know what I mean, go on newspapers.com and you can find out all sorts of good stuff. Here's where you can find me: Instagram, on Facebook, on X, and on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe, please. If you haven't, hit that subscribe button, whether you're watching on Meet and the Eatons, our family channel, or you're watching on East Idaho News. Can't thank you enough for watching. We have some good programs coming up here in the next few weeks, and I hope that you'll stay tuned for those. And I just have to thank you for watching, and a big thanks to Chris Hansen for coming on Courtroom Insider tonight. Everybody, I hope you have a great night, and we will see you again very soon.